I didn't come here to be found. I came here to disappear. But the house knew my name. The cabin waits at the edge of scrub and shadow, boards bleached to silver, windows blind with grime. I shoulder the door, and a century exhales. Dust, old cedar, a sweetness like dried herbs cracked open. 7 months pregnant, I brace my back with one hand and step into a maze of other people's endings. Jars with curled labels, books tilting in stacks, furniture under sheets that rise and fall like sleeping lungs. Somewhere in the hush, a floorboard remembers feet. Not mine yet. I tell myself I'll clear a path to water, find a mattress, sleep a week. Then a drawer glints, just open enough to feel intentional. Inside, skeleton keys, heavy as little verdicts, their teeth cold against my palm. I move through the room like a locksmith of ghosts, hutch, chest, desk. One key turns with a soft, satisfied click. The roll top folds back on oiled ribs, ledgers, lines of neat ink lean right as if they know where they're going. April 16th, frost risk high, covered seedlings, echinacea tincture, 3 drops in honey. I hear the old seasons in the loops of those letters. A name waits where a name would. Margaret Sullivan. My last name, too. Coincidence knocks, then waits to see if I answer. A tarp in the corner hides a shape my palms recognize before my mind does. Curved, low, meant for rocking. I pull the sheet and the dust blooms. Cherry wood, hand-carved leaves that look like the room is breathing through them. A cradle. A drawer. Flush as a secret, opens with a nudge. Paper folded small, edges softened by time. For the next Sullivan baby. May you rock in safety and love. Something rearranges in the air between the walls. The wind trades hands outside. Inside, my daughter presses a heel under my ribs like she's answering a roll call. I lower myself into a rocking chair I've freed from its shroud. It wakes with a sigh and takes my weight, remembers why it was built. I test the house. Light switch. Alive. Sink. Stutters, then coughs up cold. I wipe a circle. Meadow wave. If this is a mistake, it is my mistake, and I can live inside it long enough to make it mine. Set my bag. Whoever Margaret was. The question is whether or desperate enough to accept it. Snapping shut. My mother's silence on. It feels like a door. You only know. Sweep a path through the. Books like cairns to mark what matters. Run water until it clears to glass. The ledgers open where I left them. The handwriting is a personality. Tidy, decisive. Plantings, weather, remedies. On one page, a line that feels like a hand extended through time. Cover seedlings, boil jars, never trust the first warm week. A knock at the door unthreads my focus. An elderly man stands on the porch holding his straw hat like a passport. Overalls gone soft with work, eyes that know who they are. Beg pardon, he says. Saw the car, thought I'd welcome the new neighbor. He catches himself looking at my belly, and kindness edges his smile. Walter Kingsley, farm down yonder. Emma, I say. Sullivan. He nods in a way that says, figures. He steps inside, breathes the room like it's a hymn. Margaret's place, he murmurs. She was as independent as granite, bless her. He glances at the desk. Did you find her ledgers? I turn the cover to show him the name. He taps the page with a fingertip as if greeting an old friend. Midwife and healer. Brought half this valley into the world, including our Thomas. Knew the weather by smell. Knew plants by touch. Kept records like God was her auditor. The surname sits between us like a coin on the table. Sullivan, I say. I didn't plan that part. He shrugs at the sky. Names find their work. His eyes circle the clutter with affection instead of judgment. Looks worse than it is. Margaret kept everything with a purpose. If you don't know it yet, it's because you haven't needed it yet. We stand quiet a moment as if listening for the house to speak. It does. Little creaks like joints remembering rain. He refuses tea because his wife expects him for supper, but he leaves me a promise. If you need a hand, you call down the road. Not everything's meant to be done alone. After he goes, the room expands into the space his story leaves. I read the ledgers differently now. Each line, a life that passed through these walls. Catherine, Josephine, Helen. The names repeat, and on the margins I find notes like care folded into ink. Laugh when you can. It loosens what needs loosening. I brush the page with my fingertips. The handwriting is steady. My breath is not. I make myself a bed on the floor, the cradle beside me like a promise set to a slow, gentle rhythm. The night deepens, the meadow hums a low insect song. I name the sounds: distant owl, branch against roof, a mouse reconsidering its route until the town I'm not in anymore finally stops replaying behind my eyelids. Before sleep takes me, I whisper paper and dust. Opening one, rain comes, sudden the third fist trying to change. A drip becomes a thread, becomes a stain. Tea, an attic hatch. The broom handle nudges. The panel resists like a habit, then surrenders. A ladder yawns down. I test each rung with a palm, then a foot, careful of the slope of me. The attic smells like cedar and the inside of a book. Boxes are stacked with Margaret's restraint. Christmas, winter clothes, family documents written in a slant that matches the ledgers. One trunk, smaller, tucked under the eave, unlabeled as if privacy itself were the label. The hasp opens. Inside, a carved wooden box. Vines and roses intertwine like two decisions that won't separate. A small brass key in my skeleton ring finds the lock as if it remembers the feel. The lid lifts, letters bound with ribbon, the color of old sky, a journal the size of a palm. I sit on the floorboards, braced by beams that have learned to bear weight. The first letter begins, "My dearest Thomas." The ink races. A young woman flees Boston, a married man left behind, a pregnancy carried on stubbornness and shame. She signs them all and sends none. The letters document the turn from fury to clarity, her purchase of the cabin with inheritance money, her resolve to become self-sufficient, her fear when labor tightens its fist too soon. Then the last, a year later. She has your eyes. I have named her Grace. We are well. Goodbye. The journal doesn't agree. Grace died today. Born too early, I buried her at dawn beneath the oak. I am hollow. What purpose remains? The room tilts, not with the ladder, not with the baby shifting, but with the weight of a sentence that feels like a stone in a pocket. I close the book and hold it like it might still be warm. The storm punches the roof and I barely hear it. I carry everything down like a procession. Letters, journal, lamp. In the main room, the cradle waits, unslept, unwavering. I rest my hand on my stomach and find the counterpoint of another heartbeat. Not us. I whisper. Please, not us. The house answers only with the steady tick of a clock whose hands don't move. I boil water because I have to do something. I read the next pages because I can't not. Loss runs through Margaret's words like a river that refuses to be dammed. Then slowly the current bends. A line turns like a weather vane. If my body cannot carry life, my hands will. She studies, she gathers, she shows up when doctors shake their heads. The first birth she attends, she writes like prayer. A boy placed on his mother's chest, the room exhaling as one. I felt my Grace beside me, guiding my hands. I understand now. I sit until the lamp gutters low and the roof learns a gentler song. The grief in the letters feels like a door I could step through and never come back from. But the next pages show a different door and what it opens to. I wipe my eyes with the heel of my hand and look around this room that has been holding its breath for so long. I am not Margaret. I am not alone. Some archives grow leaves and wait for weather. When the rain lifts, the cabin smells rinsed. I step into a yard that looks less like neglect and more like a pause. The rectangle behind the house, which I'd called weeds, reveals raised beds if I squint like Margaret might have taught me. I sink a trowel where a bird bath lists and metal clinks my wrist through the handle. A flat stone with a ring. I pull. Earth lets go of a small chamber bricked like a sentence. Inside, a wax-sealed wooden box sleeps on straw. The wax gives. Seed packets in small jars nestle together, labels with moons and seasons. Chamomile, full moon, Aug, 95. Lavender, solstice, 96. Echinacea, first frost, 94. Beneath them, a leather notebook diagrams a garden like a spell. Companion plantings, lunar calendars, harvest notes. Margins carry human lines. Seeds are insurance, hoard hope. Emma Sullivan? The voice at my shoulder is birch bark bright. I turn. A woman in her late 70s stands with a walking stick that looks like it could talk. Silver hair in a neat bun, eyes that have watched things grow and fail and grow again. I'm Iris Blackwood, she says. Margaret's friend. Walter mentioned you. The way she says Margaret carries the same weight as mother, in other mouths. I make tea because that is the language available. On the porch, she cradles the seed box like a relic. She called these her policy against despair, Iris says. No matter what happened, storm, blight, life, she could begin again with what was stored here. She studies the notebook and smiles at a page. I remember this. We planted moonflowers the summer after. Well, she spares me the word. Loss thins the air and then thickens it again. They bloom at night, Iris says. White as small lanterns. Margaret used to say they proved beauty isn't an optimist, it's stubborn. We walk the beds. Iris points with her stick. Time prefers the path edges. Sage likes to listen to stones. You'll find volunteers, she says. What you think is weed might be a survivor. She lowers her voice the way people do in church. She'd like you here. We stand a while together in the soft sound of bees proving work is its own prayer. When she leaves, she touches my forearm with that light, practical tenderness older women keep for the young. If you get turned around, she says, go to the garden. It remembers. That evening, I plant moonflower seeds by the porch where I'll see them after the baby is asleep. I mark the row with a smooth stone and an X scratched by a nail. The sun drops behind the tree. The first whip-poor-will throws its neck. I feel the cabin at my back like someone who's promised not. I drive to Mill. The building uses now rose. Cool, quiet, and the sound of spines settling. A woman my age with curly auburn hair hangs a smile on a chain like her glasses. Amelia, her badge says. You must be the new Sullivan at Margaret's. Word travels like pollen, I've learned. I'm looking for medicinal herbs, I say, and local history. She unlocks a glass cabinet like she's letting something out to roam and hands me a binder thick with fingerprints. Millbrook Women's Auxiliary Cookbook 1985. The medicinal section is a chorus. Blackberry cordial to strengthen expectant mothers. Chamomile for morning sickness. Margin notes in various hands become a town speaking, saved my James in 93 flu. Burn salve worked when hospital gave up. Used during Sarah's birth. Eternally grateful. Margaret's name appears not as author, but as current. Most of this came through her, Amelia says. She believed knowledge you hoard rots. She slides me a reproduction copy. Welcome gift. The original is for birthdays and arguments. At the desk, a flyer waits like a dare. Community potluck Saturday. You should come, Amelia says, stamping books like a metronome. I touch my belly. I'm not sure I'll fit, she shakes her head. Margaret taught us better than pity and gossip. I bring rosemary thyme bread baked in the cabin's heat, expecting polite distance. Instead, names attached to faces and faces attached to stories. Women brush my forearm in passing the way Iris did, that brief electricity of belonging. She stayed with me through a night the doctor called impossible, one says. She taught me to breathe, another. She told my husband to go sit on the porch and shut up, a third adds, and we laugh the clean laugh of people who've done hard things. I leave with recipes, phone numbers, the kind of advice that isn't advice so much as permission. It occurs to me while driving back through Green that Margaret's legacy is not stored in jars or pages, but in 100 kitchens that know what to do when someone calls at 2 a.m. At home, I copy a cordial recipe onto an index card in a new, careful hand, one that might someday be recognized by someone like me. I set the card in the roll-top desk's cubby and tuck a sprig of rosemary behind it. The moonflowers have not yet appeared, but I believe them. The wall didn't hide a room. It hid a purpose. By week's end, the study feels less like storage and more like breath. I shift a bookcase and dust pencils and find a seam where paneling meets itself too neatly. Dust has settled different on a plank the color of kept secrets. I press, then probe with a key from the ring. A knothole is not a knothole. The clover-handled brass turns. The panel sighs inward. The smell is linen and old beeswax and something sharper. Angelica, maybe. Shelves line the small square room, glass jars labeled in the same steady hand I've been learning to trust. Bundles of dried herbs tied with ribbon that has remembered spring. In the center stands a curious wooden chair. Curved seat, arms worn to silk by desperate fingers. I've seen drawings in midwifery texts. This is where women leaned into their own strength while someone who knew what to do put their hands in the right place at the right time. Journals here are different from the ledgers. Names and hours, positions and outcomes. June 12th, 1981. Catherine, daughter after 14 hours. raspberry leaf tea, counter pressure, mother and child well. Noveth, 3, 1982. Josephine, transverse, external rotation, boy, 22 hours. Black haw for rest between surges. The writing doesn't sensationalize, it honors. The chair listens from the center of the room. On one page, the date arches back to the ache I've been carrying. April 17th, 1976, Martha Kingsley, a boy after brief labor. As I placed him in her arms, I felt my grace beside me guiding my hands. I understand now, not to bear children of my own, but to help others bring theirs safely into this world. In each birth, I find healing. I sit on the floor and let the room tell me what it has told 100 women. You are not the first and not the last, and that is a comfort. I take inventory like a gardener. Linens, wash basins, scissors with handles shaped like birds, a wooden fetoscope, polished by ears that kept their promises. Some things will be ceremonial now. Modern practice travels with kits and batteries. But the system, the order, is not outdated. It's wisdom shaped into reach. I open the hurricane lamp cabinet and find a brass lamp I noticed upstairs, the same model Margaret mentions in a margin note when power fails. I clean the globe until glass becomes nothing. I fill the reservoir as if oil could be courage. Standing in the doorway, I understand a thing I hadn't until now. I'm going to have this baby here, not because hospitals are wrong, not because I am trying to be heroic, because this room is a sentence that began before me and wants the rest of its words. Storms don't knock, they test locks. The sky turns the color of a bruise and forgets how to be gentle. Forecast calls it a nor'easter, like it's a character you can argue with. By dusk, wind is a rope around the house. Rain flies sideways. At 2:17 a.m., a pane slices low and tight and mean. I freeze, count, wait. 5 minutes later, another. Not Braxton Hicks, not rehearsal. Opening night when the theater is flooded. I reach for my phone. No service. The landline gives me silence. I grab keys and a coat and try the car. The engine clicks a ruined metronome, battery drowned by disuse and weather. Lightning distills the yard into bones. I taste the metal of fear and spit it out. Think, I tell myself, my voice the only steady thing. What would Margaret do? I light the brass lamp I cleaned like a ritual. The flame lifts and holds like it practiced. In the hidden room, I lay out linens and measure time by my breath. I open a journal and find the entry I'm looking for: premature labor. Black haw tincture, 1 dropper hourly until contractions subside, bed rest thereafter. I find the bottle in the chest, check the label twice, measure with hands that refuse to shake. The taste is bitter and medicinal, and exactly what it claims to be. Quiet. An hour passes, and the waves lose their crest. Another hour, and the intervals stretch. I speak to my daughter the way Margaret wrote to Grace. Stay. Please stay. I will hold the storm. You hold the rest of me. Dawn fades the lamps without turning them off. I keep to the cot, unwilling to insult luck with movement. My hand finds a thin journal tucked between mattress and wall. I open. The date sits 40 years away and also next to me. 3 days of false labor. Terrified. Alone. Used black haw as mother taught. Baby still moves strong. I talk to her constantly now. I've named her Grace. The edges of the page blur. I press my palm to my belly and wait for the reply. It comes, sure as a lighthouse. We have made it through the night. I sleep the sleep of someone who has borrowed tomorrow and paid it back. Sometimes you need another woman to say you're not crazy, just chosen. On the 3rd day after the scare, Iris knocks with a canvas bag and a look that has already counted my breaths. Walter said your hood was up, she says. Figured you needed eggs and bread. She sets the bag on the table and produces a leather photo album so soft with years it feels alive. If you're living here, you should see her. We turn pages together. Margaret young and unsmiling, chin set like a plumb line. Margaret in an herb garden dense as an argument. Margaret at a kitchen table with jars like stained glass saints. Margaret beside a hospital bed, holding a swaddled infant and a woman whose hair is plastered to her forehead with triumph. Iris in that bed. Younger, eyes wet. She delivered my Sarah, Iris says. After nearly sending me to bed for 6 weeks with tease and threats. She could be bossy when your life required it. Another photo. Margaret with a lanky girl in a white coat. Helen Chen, Iris says. Medical school graduation. Margaret put her through. Said the future needed people who could speak both languages. Dr. Chen becomes a person the next morning in her office in town. Trim, efficient, a smile with zero condescension. Everything looks perfect, she says, after listening daughter's heart like it's music. You're 4 weeks out, give or take. I tell her about the hidden room and the journals, and I brace for lecture. Margaret delivered me in that room, she says. I won't argue with legacy, but I will insist on prudence. I'll be on call. Carolyn, a wife, will attend if she agrees. By the time I drive home, the cabin feels already noted and some signatures. I stand in the hidden and say out loud to the chair and the lamp and the shelves, do this right. The house makes gifts. You finish them. Heat fattens the light and slows the flies. I notice an outbuilding, half hidden by lilac. The padlock is a posture, but skeleton keys teach patience. Inside, dust motes rise like a flock. A long workbench remembers hands. Tools hang in order, no rust on their ethics. Planes, chisels, saws arranged by need and respect. On sawhorses sleep shapes under drop cloths. I lift the first cloth and exhale. A child's rocking chair, joints pegged, curves made to fit a small human's future. Another cloth hides a toy chest with woodland animals in relief, their eyes so clean they seem to notice me. The last cloth covers a mobile mid-birth, fox and owl complete, rabbit earless, deer still a block trying to decide to be a deer. On the bench, pattern books labeled with dates and notes, softer curve for small hands, carve with grain, not against. Sand until the wood stops arguing. Started as therapy, Walter says at the doorway, as if the house summoned him. Doctor told her to work with her hands after the baby. Sold a fair bit too. Folks drove from the city for something made by someone who cared. He touches the unfinished deer with a tenderness that steals 10 years off his face. Seems right you finished this one. I am not a woodworker, but I am someone who can learn. I sit on the stool, feel the knife's balance, test the way wood wants to be asked. The first shavings curl like question marks, then like yeses. Time thins. The deer steps forward out of its own future. It is not perfect. It is honest. When I set the piece beside fox and owl, they look like a conversation resumed. I hang the finished mobile above the cradle when the glue dries and the sanding stops. Fox listens to secrets. Owl knows them already. Rabbit will get her ears tomorrow. The mobile turns when I walk by. I imagine tiny eyes following it and feel my own eyes get stupid. Love is physical. It rearranges what your arms consider heavy. Sometimes the city comes to the country to apologize for timing. The black sedan looks wrong in the ruts like a penguin in a pasture. A man in a suit picks his way through grasshoppers and reconsidered choices. Emma Sullivan, he offers a card. Lawrence Winters, Winters and Blackwood. May I? At the table, he sets a folder like a plate and begins with the sentence people use when they need you calm. There's no problem with your purchase. He explains the rest. Margaret's will specified the cabin be sold, yes, but only to a mother in need, and that the property be maintained by a trust until the right buyer appeared. The trustee, his retired partner, Iris Blackwood. The realtor handled the transaction, he says, but Miss Blackwood handled the meaning. I sit very still while reality retunes itself. My miracle was arranged by a woman who learned not to waste miracles. Lawrence withdraws a sealed envelope, the wax impressed with a herb sprig, no name on the outside, only, for the next caretaker? I'll leave you privacy, he says, rising. Call when you're ready to sign the trust documents. There's money enough for repairs and taxes and time. After he goes, the house is louder with birds and possibility. I break the seal and unfold paper that aches with a familiar hand. To the one who comes after, if you're reading this, you have been chosen not by me alone, but by whatever weaves what we call coincidence. This place saved me when I had nothing. Care for it, and it will care for you. The key you need most isn't metal. It is the understanding that some sanctuaries find their people. Some wounds become wells. Pass what you learn forward. Margaret Sullivan. I read it twice, 3 times, until the ink feels like it could climb into my blood. I look around at the choices I have made that I thought were mine. Maybe they were. Maybe they were also invited. That night, before I sleep, I place the letter in the roll-top desk. Third cubby on the left, between the cookbook and the mobile pattern plans. I imagine someone's fingers finding it years from now. I imagine the look on their face, the one I know I wore. When the lights die, you find out which lamps are alive. October sharpens the air like a knife cleaned and put away. Warnings pile up, heavy rain, high wind, power loss expected across New England. Carolyn, the midwife, comes in the morning before the sky decides. Everything looks perfect, she says, hands sure, voice steady. Baby's ready, your body's ready, storm or no storm, call me as soon as contractions are regular. She leaves with reluctance and contingency plans. By evening, wind is a creature circling the eaves, choosing its approach. I fill the bathtub, line up candles, charge a phone that will soon be nothing but a mirror. The power blinks 3 times like a superstition and then goes. The brass lamp takes its place without complaint. I carry it room to room, checking locks we can trust. Just after midnight, the first contraction comes. Not a suggestion, a command. I breathe through the length of it the way Carolyn taught. 20 minutes later, another. The phone shows me only my face. The landline hisses a lake of silence. The road beyond the drive will be scripted with fallen trees by morning. If the baby decides to come now, we are together in this room, with the chair and the lamp, and a woman's handwriting to tell us what to do next. I keep moving. Movement reminds my body we've rehearsed. The lamp's glow rounds edges that storm has sharpened. 7 minutes. 5. I time, I drink, I speak to my daughter. We are okay. We are exactly where we are supposed to be. Pain builds a private weather. I do not fight it. I let it happen as if it were something I have already survived. By late morning, contractions stack like waves with barely any shore between. I brace on the chair's arms, the same wood, worn smooth by the same work. I reach for the journal and open to a page Margaret wrote for this part. Transition brings doubt. Every mother believes she cannot continue when she is closest to meeting her child. Remind her the world is older than pain, and so is she. I set the book down and remind myself aloud like I'm both patient and midwife. You can't until you do. A contraction takes me and I break on it. I can't, I hear myself say, and the room absorbs it without judgment. The lamp brightens with the gust under the window, and for a second, the flame looks like a hand answering mine. I am too tired to be afraid of ghosts, and too hungry for help to refuse any. Okay, I say to the light, to the chair, to the women whose names line the pages around me. Be here. The urge to push comes like a tide that forgives nothing. I move to the position that feels like a door widest. Between surges, I glance at the diagram in my head. The order of clamps, the warmth of towels, the gentleness required when everything inside me says, bear down, now. Carolyn would say, slow the head. Let the tissue learn. I listen. The world narrows to breath. Count, hold, sigh, gather, press. The baby crowns and the burn is holy. I tell myself a story that ends with life and keep it short. With the next surge, the head is out. I reach down and feel hair slick and human and more real than anything I have ever owned. One shoulder, then the other. And she is in my hands in a room where 100 first breaths were welcomed before this one. She cries. I remember to laugh and then to cry and then to say the names of things out loud so they stay. Girl, I say. Daughter. Grace. I press her to my chest and feel the quiet explode into a clarity that makes the storm outside sound like someone else's problem. I clamp and cut, clean and wrap, check and double check, with habits learned from pages and caution. When I finally look up, the wind has forgotten why it was angry, and the rain has become the kind that forgives roofs. Hours slide into the soft noise new people make when they are discovering their lungs and their hunger and their mother. I sit on the small cot under a quilt stitched with circles and a label that takes my breath. For the next Sullivan child. I rock, the mobile turns, the lamp keeps its promise, and the room that hid itself to be ready for tonight relaxes like a jaw unclenched. When sleep takes us, it takes both at once. The opposite of alone is not crowded, it's held. By the third sunrise, the road is a suggestion people are brave enough to follow. Carolyn arrives, having hiked the last stretch, cheeks wind-slashed, bag intact. She examines us with the contentment of a story that stuck its landing. You did everything right, she says. then scolds me for doing it alone with a smile that forgives me for being exactly who I am in an emergency. Dr. Chen appears the next morning with supplies and a joke about house calls being a heritage in this county. She's perfect, she says, regarding Grace like she's reading a favorite line of poetry. You're not bad either. She looks around the room that kept its word and nods, as if to an old colleague. That afternoon, trucks grumble up the drive like a parade that forgot its banner. Iris leads, carrying a basket that looks too humble to be as important as it is. Behind her come Amelia, Walter, and his wife, 3 women from the potluck. 2 I don't know but do by the time they set their dishes down. They fan into the main room and turn it into a ceremony without asking permission. Bone broth, stew, bread still talking to itself, flowers, gifts that look like they were saved for someone worth the waiting. It's tradition, Dr. Chen says softly. When a baby is born at home, the women bring the welcome. An elderly woman places a small wooden box in my hands. My mother's medicine spoon, she says. Margaret measured my baby's tonics with it. Now it's for yours. Iris sets her basket down and lifts the cloth. A silver rattle, knitted caps, a christening gown honest about its years, a journal with entries from mothers whose children are now people who mow lawns and fix roofs and argue about zoning. At the bottom, an envelope in Margaret's hand. Emma. I open it when the house breathes quieter. You will be tempted to do everything yourself. Don't. Let the women carry you when you are meant to be carried. I look around at the evidence that I'm late to learning that lesson, but not too late to practice it. Toward evening, another car turns where the lane meets the road, a gloss that looks wrong against the wild. Michael sits on the porch steps with his tie loosened like an argument he lost. He stands when he sees me and the baby. His face is thinner than the last time it judged me. I heard, he says. Your mother told me, finally. He looks at Grace and flinches at his own chest. I made a mistake. Once these words were the door I begged to open. Now they are a door I can acknowledge without walking through. Grace deserves to know you, I say. We will set terms that keep her safe and keep me sane. Our home is here. He nods fast like a man grateful for instructions. He holds her like she's carved from something that forgives him. She yawns at the city on his shirt and decides it's not her problem. When he goes, I feel sadness and relief shake hands and part ways. At dusk, I hang the wooden sign I carved in the weeks where waiting felt like training. Sullivan Margaret Cottage. The hyphen is a bridge. The name is a prayer. Inside, the mobile turns. The moonflowers have begun their night work. And the lamp, now a habit more than a need, casts a warm curve on the wall. I rock, and the floorboards match my rhythm. An old house harmonizing with a new vow. I do not know everything that comes next. I know enough. The garden will raise its hand, and I will call on it. The women will keep showing up if I let them. Dr. Chen thinks I should train what I've learned into a life. The ledgers have blank pages. Grace breathes against my collarbone like someone who trusts the structure of the world. I lay my palm on her back and tell her the thing I wish someone had told me sooner. We are not starting over. We are continuing.